You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way. Oh, well, so glad we got through all of that.
All of those vision-related spells, all those darknesses and daylights, and dark visions, daylight vision, and
no more repetition from here on in, right, Warlord?
So we've gone on
Right.
from all the spells to have to do with being able to see, to all the spells about being able to see specific things. We have entered the land of detecting.
We need an Investomancer. No way, that's a Finn wizard. No, okay. I see now. I've just read the list. That's a lot of detects.
Yep.
Welcome to this. Hold on, I've got something for this. Spell Cull. Episode 9, I believe. Just to set the scene for those of you who decided to jump in, I'm not going to say midpoint. We're doing this alphabetically, and we're on D after 9 episodes. But we are, of course, sitting in the spell library, a sort of a smoking room / bonfire of prohibited works. For there's nothing we like more than ripping out pages and watching them crackle. And
there's an attractive man with the fancy mustache who poses for pictures somewhere around here, but he's not part of the actual podcast.
The spell, what do we call him? The spell auditor. Let's inject some backstory now. Yes, once we've made our decisions, the spell auditor checks over the work of myself, SavageMick, and my esteemed censor-in-chief, Warlord Scarr. And yes, he makes the various corrections required. So that eventually we're hoping to publish a spell pamphlet rather than spell book with the allowed spells in D&D in 5th ed. It's because that's the thing we do now. If you were worried, dear listener, that the Adventuring Party was about to sort of step away from long format, multi-part series, worry not. We've got years of work ahead of us.
Yes. Punch through it as we go.
What then is the premise of a Spell Cull?
We are going to investigate the 5th edition Player's Handbook and look at all the spells that are there and just try to give succinct explanations of why is the spell here? Does it still belong in the game that people actually play? Or is it better just cut for page count to slim down the tome and make it parsable? Because like a lot of people will say that 5th ed is a rules light game, but that's maybe just kind of being reductive to the basic mechanic is D20 plus odd number, but like in terms of content, every spell is adding extra, let's call it overhead on the running of the game, and a lot of them just even the act of listing them is just making the actual book heavier and a more of a pain to carry around, and it's just a lot of the stuff just isn't as useful in the game people are actually playing than they seem to think, and a lot of it is just legacy cruft. Speaking of which, we have once upon a time the great sin of the paladin, the infamous detect evil and detect good, now together in one spell, but that still might be one spell too many.
Is that enough for us? Okay, first level. Range of 30 feet, so if you can see them. And it's got a concentration for 10 minutes. Right, what do we say about this then? Oh yes, so detect evil and good. Very clunky name. Surely good and evil.
Well, they're trying to deliberately reference a previous spell, but the spell doesn't like the spell was like for detecting villains and
surely they should be trying to reference Nishi, beyond good and evil, which is exactly where they.
But this is 5th ed. It doesn't reference German philosophers, the early 20th century. It references older D&D editions, so it's referencing detect evil that paladins used to have in the third and second edition, and it's also referencing detect good, which is a spell that evil clerics had to use in whenever the party was sneaking into a place, and they'd have to instead of doing the weird stab this puppy to prove you're not a cop thing, they would just cast detect good, and then these are infiltrators from the player characters. Time for a fight. Yeah.
I'm sorry, given the amount of dogs that get shot by cops, like, what's that test about? We digress. Okay, detect evil and good
But
for
it
the
doesn't even
duration.
detect. Yeah, it doesn't even detect evil anymore. It detects aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, or undead. Which I'm pretty sure those. If you want to give a categorization to them, it's not evil and good. It's from another world. Like aberrations are
Yeah,
now more and more. They're just the Cthulhu people, Cthulhu monsters. Undead now have connections to the ancient Shadowfell.
aren't
Fae are
hags
from the
fae?
Feywild,
Yeah. And if you're an Eberron, none of these automatically give you bad or good, anyways. In fact, assuming you're even using the alignment system. Anyways, any of those will be detected if they're within 30 feet of you, as well as where they're located, within 30 feet of you. So, similarly, if you know if there is a place or object within 30 feet of you that has been. Sorry, you also get told if there's something within 30 feet that's been magically consecrated or desecrated. So, and the spell can penetrate most barriers, but it is blocked by a whole bunch of common barriers, like 1 foot of stone, an inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood or dirt. So, a tree, for example, of sufficient size. It's
yeah.
just, I'll hide from their visual sight. Well, I'll detect good, evil, planar things. But I'll be behind this tree, so.
Yeah, I expect the all these limitations were put in back in AD&D First Ed when Gygax noticed that instead of using their eyes, players were just spamming detect spells to detect monsters, and so or detect what's inside this box. Is it evil or good or magical or and
Okay.
he just had 1 inch of lead, thin sheet of lead around every safe, so you actually have to open it.
Like a well-built roof will probably stop this.
Which is yeah, okay.
Okay, now I have to say, like, for the sake of time, I've just cracked open the following detect magic, detect poison, and what's it
Disease.
called? Disease. And the wording is exactly the same.
It
30
is
feet, first
uncannily.
level, 10 minutes concentration, faint, and you detect, and it spell can penetrate most barriers except these really common barriers.
Yes.
Okay.
The only difference is the detect magic and detect poison disease. Apart from detecting magic, poison, disease, they're also counted as rituals. So you can, if you're
Just as well.
if you're a very patient party and your GM does not roll for random counters very often, you can just spend 10 minutes to detect things as a ritual.
Good.
Which is
At least there's
fine, but
that.
yeah,
Now,
but
it's basically just, let's put all of them. If you're a long time listener to this series, you know what I'm going to say next. Let's put them all in one bucket and probably make them cantrips. Or
okay.
ritual casts are probably good enough. There's better
Here's the
things to
thing.
waste
Like,
your time.
I think from the perspective of fifth ed and the way people are said, you're probably right. You probably should just be cantrips at this point because the hiding of information is not really a you either need to ban them completely or you need to make them cantrips. Because I don't think, make nickel and diming people for first level spell slots is not actually, that useful of a thing. I've never thought of it that way. But honestly, for my money, I'm wondering how much this should not be a spell at all. Okay,
Just make it sort of innate to certain kinds of spellcasters. They can kind of do a woo woo and know things.
I honestly I don't think detect magic should be a spell. I think if something is magical, it should be as obvious as the giant green glowing power gems that are crusted into it. I don't. There's this thing that presumably Gygax in his infinite wisdom and total contempt for player success presumably hid magic items as these rusty swords of absolute uselessness. But if you detect magic on them, it turns out they're actually amazing. Or other such things. And I just don't agree with that as a aesthetic. I think if something is a magical item, then it is glowing with power, vibrating slightly at all times.
Right.
When
Just
you
obnoxious then.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's very okay in a sort of a 4-color sense, sure, but I think that would. First of all, I wouldn't put that kind of constraint on any GM to say, if you've got magic items, they've got to be this way. I think magic items are interesting because of all the different ways they can be. Sure, some of them are as obvious as a singing sword, but some, like the true chalice in Raiders of the other one, Raiders of the Lost Ark. No, set that one on. Last Crusade, Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. Like some of the trick is that they don't stand out. Yet it requires a special sort of knowing.
Okay.
Well, either faith and that. That's probably not a great example, but the
No,
One
I
Ring,
can get
the
that.
One
And
Ring,
I
depending on whom it sometimes would choose to reveal itself to, it might come off differently. Excalibur, obviously, you got to have the right palm print. Just clear techno magic, really. Any veteran in Numenera can tell you that one. It's genetically linked, probably the Pendragons. Right, we're burning daylight here. So, what are we going to do with the detect family of spells?
I mean, as I said, there's a couple of ways we do it. I don't know about rolling them all up to one because they are technically their own niches. There are technically different things. One is sort of a clericy spell for detecting corruption. Although it really should be, they should just list what the DC for identifying disease is. They probably do somewhere, and I just don't.
Cleric Paladin. And detect even good as clerics, paladins, and something called the genie, according to D&D Beyond. But that's like just detect foreigner. It's like detect not from round here. It's like
Your
your
yeah.
face doesn't fit, mate. What are you trying to say?
But
And yes, cleric, druid, paladin for detect poison and disease. Detect magic is kind of an outlier. It's available to lots and lots of classes, bards through to artificers, etc. Okay, yes, I take your point. They kind of belong to different classes. However, and they're all rituals, which I'm fine with. It does save a spell slot. I don't know. I don't know what to say about these now. Just different enough, and also terribly uninteresting.
My bias would be to cut them and just put explicit rules in the players that that assuming your players are from this place or they have the right skills, they would just know most of these things. Like, you could maybe keep one or two of them, like detect extra player. But like for me, if I was this is me designing from scratch, I would cut everything. In the fifth that we have, I'd say it's difficult to justify cutting detect magic if a GM is not of the same temperament as myself and wants magic to be hidden. But the others I could easily see cutting.
All right. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'd say maybe roll detect magic into identify.
Yeah,
So
that would work.
Cast as ritual to either, sit down with that thing you figure is magical and figure out what it does, or use it to sort of generally scan for magic for the duration. All right, let's crack on because we've just spent like 10 minutes on those three.
Yeah.
We're done with the detects now, right? That's it for the detects. I'm delighted.
I'm sorry to pick your brain,
that was detect evil and good, detect magic, detect poisons and diseases, so we can move on to Oh,
Yeah,
what's
we.
this one?
So I got to pick your brain a bit for detect thoughts.
Very good.
Uh,
Detect thoughts. At least, okay, so it's now we're going up. It's a second level spell. Concentration for a minute. And the range is. Oh, you're casting on yourself. Now, this one's got a bit of heft to it. Do you want to take us through
yeah.
what it does?
All right. So the premise is you can, for this minute of concentration, you can detect the thoughts of certain creatures. We'll probably get to that exception. Each, as your action, each turn until the spell ends, you focus your mind on one creature within 30 feet. It doesn't work on creatures that are animals or don't speak any language because their thoughts are too primitive or too alien for you to detect. Initially, it is the surface thoughts of the creature that you find. What the obvious things is like, I am looking at some weirdo wizard who's staring at me too much. Presumably, is the surface thoughts of a lot of these people. And then, as an action, you can change another creature or attempt to probe deeper, prompting a wisdom save. You can, if you succeed or they fail, I suppose, you gain. You can learn their reasoning, their emotional state, and any other big things that they're thinking about. And
And
you
acts as
keep.
detect in the traditional sense as well, in that it can find or
Mhm.
detect the presence of thinking creatures that you can't necessarily see. Presumably, and it can penetrate barriers. But in this case, oh god, I'm not
Slightly more than the others. It's
yeah, 2 feet of rock, 2 inches of metal, or a thin sheet of lead blocks you. Nothing about trees on this occasion. Right.
yeah.
Okay. Right.
Um.
So this one's interesting. This is depends. It's very, very circumstantial, which you could say about a lot of spells that aren't fireball. But
It's one of
obviously,
those,
go ahead.
I like to call them social knock spells. It's like we
Yeah.
could we could delve deep into this monster's backstory, learn its motivations, or um, try to understand where it's coming from with skill checks and role playing banter. Or I could cast the spell and just get what we want with it, and then go somewhere else. Um,
I think it's kind of interesting because I think the GM is generally going to be fine with this because the situation's been manufactured so that you get your hands on the right person and they know something that the GM wants you to know. So you cast this as like, yeah, this is great. They they will not tell you, but it doesn't matter because you find it anyways. If Batman had been able to cast this, I think that interrogation scene with the Joker would have gone a lot better. It's
maybe.
is there does the spell break anything, or is this sort of almost entirely a kind of a well, this was sort of information I wanted you to have anyways
It
deal?
it's going to depend again on your DM style, where like it's one of those spells where you can cast it and then just sort of bypass. Like if your GM wanted to have that cool Joker interrogation scene where you have a verbal banter with them for entire 10 minute scene and back and forthing skill checks and social combat and etc., then it might be kind of a disappointment if you cast one spell, their mighty Joker analog fails their first wisdom save. So the players of the entire plot laid out before them. Um,
Well, I think you could be a bit more canny about it. In fact, I think the way that this works best is if you get to play good cop, magic cop. So you've got charismatic or insightful or intelligent PC or player character asking the questions, and the wizard is kind of monitoring those thoughts to see what questions elicit what responses. Pair that up with what they actually say, and you can put the whole thing together. Like it's something it feels like sort of an advanced scene for a GM to run. But
yeah,
if you've done the work of figuring out who the NPC is, what they want, and they're more than one dimension, I think you could have a really interesting scene with this, especially if that wizard is somehow, sort of nudging I suppose in the course of them being able to play it back and forth, and the players at the table are hearing everything the GM has to say, reporting both the answers verbally given and the thoughts that arise, then you could really have one of those classic sweatbox interrogation scenes, and the players get an awful lot of information out of it.
Yeah,
But
like if
again,
a
very
GM is ready
substantial.
for it, if a GM is ready for it, I think it will go well. And
Yeah.
they're willing to accept the players' spellcasting into their GMing style, and roll with it and make sure it adds to the thing rather than just blow the entire case wide open in 2 rounds and a failed will save.
Give them enough to get them in trouble. The other
Yeah.
great place to use it, of course, is at one of those sort of fraught kind of royal courts or a meeting of executives, getting a sense of what the underlying currents are. It allows the GM, frankly, to. In fact, this might be a great NPC spell to cast,
Mhm.
or to cast on a player, and it's a self, but we'll wing it, to allow a GM to communicate the top line of what's being said or done on any given occasion, and then the underlying tensions.
Potentially.
So I don't think I hate it. I think, in fact, and it's such a classic
Yeah.
detect cults, like it's right there.
I-
I think I'd stick with this one, and
Yeah.
in fact, it's second level. You get access to it really early. It's I don't think it's ever going to, unless you're completely caught off guard by it. I don't think there's any reason for it to really
Yeah.
upset a game. It's one of those spells that gives the players the sense that they've got a leg up on the situation, that they're no longer, running from behind.
Yeah.
They can get ahead of something and start to have some agency in an adventure. So, yeah, I think I like this one.
Yeah. I would say, this is a good one to keep around, but it is one of the ones where if you do take it, please tell your GM. Actually, I'm thinking I'll be taking detect thoughts, and if you want to say whether or not is evidence gathered by detect thoughts admissible in court. It might be something you want to sort out now rather than have it spun halfway through this next session, and
Ooh.
other such things. Just don't surprise your GM with it. Give them a little bit of warning, and I'm sure it'll come out better for both of you.
Okay, listen. Let's step away from the detects now. In fact, we could step in a whole ways away with the next one, which is
Dimension Door, a 4th level conjuration spell to teleport you up to 500 feet in an instant. This is, this is one of those ones where this is the class. This is the original short range teleport spell. Anywhere that you could see, actually, don't no.
pretty good. This one.
Any place you can see, any place you can visualize in your head, or you just sort of pick a direction and
Yeah.
distance. So if you're really good at geometry, you can skip through walls with it. But
How do you break the mega dungeon?
I mean,
Door.
if you know where you're going and it's one of those things like that.
Actually, those stipulations do speak to a time when map making was key.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I can calculate down to the 5-foot square where that is from the maps we've made. I'm like, okay, dimension door to there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
just crack the whole thing wide open. Which is, hey, if you've done all that work, you deserve to be able to get to it.
And if you get the math wrong, there's a nice simple. You take 46 force damage as you bounce off the atoms that are already there, and you fall back where you were.
Oh, that's quite generous, actually, as opposed to you materialize inside the granite and die.
Yes,
Horribly.
which I'm pretty sure was a possibility in other earlier editions, but
Pretty
this one
much.
simply has a nice.
You get to bring a friend as well.
Yes, this is anything you can normally carry plus one person you're touching as you within 5 feet of you.
What's this for?
Well, it's a utility short range. It's okay. Short range is probably like it's not teleport. Is teleport sixth
Like
level or fifth?
Misty Step and things like that are short range. This
Yeah,
is
that's the thing.
500 feet of
This
4th level spell. That's pretty good.
Yeah, Dimension Door is the OG reliable teleport. Um,
And of course, it appears in was that in the D&D movie? That's the one they used.
yeah, that was
Yeah, to get across the bridge.
the hmm.
Good fun. Good movie. Go see that movie, guys.
But like Misty Step did not appear. I think Misty Step was more of a. I suspect it's one of those spells that was added like in 3.5 in the spell compendium, and
Yeah.
because because WoW had done rogues being able to teleport like 10 feet into battle, and this was a thing that they wanted D&D. This is late 3.5 was the time of the fighter wizard of various types, where there's all the
I was
prestige
just going to
classes,
say, yeah. It's
and
Misty Step's definitely a fixture in the half caster.
mhm.
That doesn't sound great. The what if you're not a full cast
Yeah, the
class?
term
Misty Step's
that
going to show up a lot.
they came up with the term gish,
Gish, gish.
at a certain point because of certain Dungeon magazine articles about Git Yankee, I
Oh
believe.
yeah,
And
gish has been thrown around for at least 20 years now. I think
yeah,
we're
yeah,
safe enough to employ it.
yeah. But yes,
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing. It's like Misty Step appeared, and I think it kind of outstripped Dimension Door in terms of use, because it was a lower level spell, and it was something used in a battle, whereas Dimension Door is very often, as you say, used for crossing massive chasms or for going between levels on a dungeon,
yeah.
and those
I think
are
it's also with the one willing companion. It's a kind of get them out of here sort of thing. It's
yeah.
sort of the the last gasp rescue kind of
Mhm.
spell.
But it also
Uh,
has that sort of problems, like you can only bring one person with you.
mm.
Is it going to be the dying cleric, or is it going to be your best friend the barbarian, or is it going to be your horse, because that counts as another creature?
That horse never betrayed me. Owed me some money, but never betrayed me.
Yeah.
Okay. Dimension Door, I guess. Okay, let's. The utility is fine. I think it's a decent spell. Now, are we cutting it because it's superseded by something better, or it's maybe too expensive in terms of spell level, or
Now
something like
that
that?
they have
Is it
Misty
pitched to the
Step,
right place?
yeah, now that they have Misty Step and teleport as sort of bracketing this, it's kind of in an awkward level spot. It's 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 useful. It's more useful than Misty Step in an absolute sense, but Misty Step is often more efficient for one of the things that you would want to do, is just like appear behind a barrier or on top of a tower and start stabbing people up there. So I think the president of Misty Step has taken a lot of the gas out of Dimension Door. It's a utility spell that is very useful, but uh, it's this is another one of those spells where I think having starting making Dimension Door the start at the Misty Step power level, and then if you cast it at the fourth level, you get the Dimension Door abilities, and then if you cast it at the seventh level, it becomes Teleport. That's where I would like to see it going, but
Right.
as a spell on its own, I I think this is a cull for me, but it is marginal. I could accept keeping it in just because it's nice. A different type of teleporting than Misty Step does, where it's not about battle so much as it is,
Oh,
actually getting around.
can Misty Step pass through stuff? I think it can.
Yeah, I
I think
don't think there's any. It gets blocked by anything, but again, the vagueness could be help with a bit of writing.
in the right kind of game, this is very powerful.
Yeah.
It isn't really held back by anything except how high level it is. Because fourth level, I mean, a full caster has got to be what,
3 or 4 of
seven?
those at best.
7th level or something to be able to cast this. I forget what wizards get at what levels.
Yeah, 7th level is when you get 4th level spells.
Yeah.
And by the time you're...
And that's most campaigns. You might not have too much more.
But you max
road
out
ahead
at
of
3
you.
of them by 9th level in most classes.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's where that'll go.
Yeah. I think I'm with you on this one. Again, it's one of those ones I'd like to see sort of concertinaed into similar spells and then adjust by level that you juice it, whatever level you cast it at. You can get different effects. All right, let's sort of kind of squish that one down into infinitely small dimensions. And we're sort of saying it's cold, but it's also not cold. It's there, just if
Yeah.
you squint. Now, squinting, something you'd probably have to do if you're trying to penetrate this next spell.
Yes,
Which
a
is
disguise self. This is the first level illusion that lets you make yourself appear up to a foot shorter, taller. You can change how bulky you think. You can't change, how many arms you appear to have, or give yourself an extra head. But you can generally mess around with your appearance to a reasonable degree. Now, if someone was to start poking the extra features you have added or removed from yourself in this, they will find that this is merely a hologram, and there's a thing. But
what
yeah,
can you say?
other than that, they would have to make
Lasts for an hour.
investigation. Yeah, this is your infiltration spell. This is your I make myself look like a guard and walk in
I
type
think
spell.
one of the things that's interesting with this is that interaction, someone might try and poke you, and their hand kind of hits your belly before, when it looks like it should still be it doesn't actually negate the spell.
No, it's just merely they are no longer fooled, but the spell is still intact.
So it's not concentration. It's first level. It lasts an hour, and it has some robustness to it. I kind of love this. It's a great example of what I think a lot of spells should be. First of all, potential for hilariousness, because you can change the way you look, but presumably not the way you sound. It doesn't change anything else about you, and it holds up somewhat. And then they get to make so if they figure out that you're disguised, a creature uses action, so they have to take an action to do it. Inspect your appearance, kind of give you the sniff test, and succeed on an intelligence investigation check against your spell save DC. So you might pass. You might manage to kind of sort of pass a particularly dopey guard who doesn't, kind of goes, all right, whatever, fine, on you go. You get one of those squeaky bum moments that's kind of apparent in fiction, but is often, no, we're just going to start fighting now in D&D. And I think this is generous. It's funny. It's useful. It's useful as all heck. So many different ways you can use this. And it has limitations. If you change your appearance too much, it's going to be potentially kind of going to rumble you. It's not necessarily going to change what you can, you can't sound like someone else. So if you're a gnome and you rock up trying to impersonate a gruff guard captain, you're like, yes, you there, go look over the wall or something. Not sure that gnomes do sound like that, but anyways. I think I kind of love it and it's simple. It's so easy to understand.
I would say that this is a solid use of a illusion spell. It is pretty clear what it could do and what it can't do, how to overcome it. I think this is a good standard to have illusion spells set at, because one of the things we're going to see with later illusion spells is that you can come up with all kinds of nonsense, and the GM will often have to scrabble to figure out like what is having 7 clown dragons show up in the middle of town? What did people do with that? What percentage of the population are fooled? Do they just not see the thing that the other people are running from? Oh no, I don't know how to organize this nonsense. I've started wars in games because of the use of dangerous illusion magic. But this one is nice, clear, succinct, and it has a useful and entertaining effect that can enable all kinds of play. So yes, I think Disguise Self is going to get a pass from me.
Yeah, I like it's like, and the limitations are interesting. Like, it doesn't generate any sort of auditory effects or anything like that. So if you've got a parrot on your shoulder due to this, parrot's not going to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it won't squawk or anything. It's like it might. You could make it do all the actions, I guess, because it's as you said, can't change your body types. So you must adopt a form that has the same basic range of limbs. Otherwise, the extent of the illusion is up to you. So you can add bells and whistles and whatever, literally bells,
Mm-hmm.
but they won't ring.
Yeah.
It's just a visual illusion. Okay, I think we're keeping that one in, which means, so I don't have a good lead into this one. It's just another one of those heavy hitters.
Yeah.
If once never
One of the
mind raw damage through things like primordial forces like fireball. When you absolutely have to clear a room,
Disintegrate. Although I don't think this is a room clear. This is very much a screw that person in particular spell. This is a transmutation, which is the benefit of being one of the top damaging spells in the game, where you target someone, they must make a dex save. If they succeed, presumably they have dodged this deadly green ray. And although it is a little ambiguous whether it just keeps going until it destroys the wall behind them, which I presume will be up to Jim. But
it's at a target, so presumably it stops at the target. So
I would have to guess.
your shot picture is say you're not going to hit bystanders as such. Man, it's a big cast, like 6th level, as you say.
It is
And it's
possibly one
like,
of the biggest non-evocation damage spells because it does 10d6 plus 40. So
yeah.
so we're looking at 50 to 100 damage off a failed save on this. And it's targeting a dexterity save. So this is one of those dragon killer spells where I have so many amazing saving throws. Nothing can touch me except I can't dodge things because I am a very large dragon. Oh dear, I have been disintegrated.
Right.
Now,
Although
at
it's very
6th level,
large, so
6th
if
level is
target is huge or larger, the spell disintegrates a 10-foot cube. I suppose if someone took a 10-foot cube out of a dragon, it's still going to mean something.
yes.
Lots of 10-foot cubes of any dragon probably include things like a spleen or a wing or a neck. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, hard to get by without.
And if you're disintegrated by this, you need high level magic to bring back. No revivify spam for you. You need to be true resurrected because there's nothing left but the finest of dust.
I don't know how down I am with this. Like, it's not a on save half damage spell.
Yeah, it's all or nothing.
Yeah. Is there any kind of sauce you can put on this to make sure it hits, or is it just?
And presumably there are ways to give people disadvantage on saving throws, usually by triggering other saving throws.
You gotta kind of ramp up to this thing.
Or
It's
Bane, I
interesting.
suppose, if you want to use debuff spells.
True. Um, So, yeah, some way to rob them of that dexterity saving throw. Hold person, I guess. Something like that. So, where are we on Disintegrate? I honestly haven't run into it that often. I'd hate to be on the receiving end of
It's
it.
a high level spell. This is like 6th level, so you need to be like
Hmm.
level 11. You're probably not going to see. Okay, you're going to see this in two situations. If your campaign goes on a level or two higher than most of the campaigns that they do, and you actually get up to level 11 and start really putting the boot in, and you just start. This will all of a sudden you'll have this once per day just remove target person spell. Although at a certain point, yeah, you are going to have to invest a little bit in reducing other people's saving throws to make sure, or
Yeah.
save it for big boys who aren't so light on their feet.
So you've got one of your half casters or a warlock or something putting debuffs on like a hex or whatever.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
hex would work, right? Hex you can specify.
Can't remember if hexes
You
may give other casters. I know you'd have
can
disadvantage
specify that
on
the target has
their.
disadvantage on this or that kind of saving throw.
Yeah. There's
Um,
ways to do it. There's ways to do it.
so you got a warlock buddy who's kind of lasering the target, and then you hit him with a disintegrate. And you get to keep their stuff, or at least their magical stuff, because that's immune from disintegration. So it's a it's very
It's one of those,
no nonsense.
yeah. That presumably in earlier editions, every magic item under a person had to make a saving throw or be destroyed, and presumably ancient gems were meant to cackle uproariously as magic loot was turned to dust.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh, and it has scaling. If you cast higher level spells, you
Yeah.
get extra 3d6 damage, so average about 10 damage per spell slot. It's okay.
I'm sure the 7th level spells that do
Uh,
or do something more interesting.
well, yeah. Once you get past 6th level spells, each spell slot is a maximum of 1. You don't get multiple. You don't get multiples of 6th or higher
Upcasting
level
this is a
spells.
big decision.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's much else quite like it.
It is
Just raw
possibly the
damage
last
output.
saver dice spell left in the proper set. We'll see as
Yeah.
we go, but it is one of the big saver dice spells. Because I'm pretty sure it didn't start doing damage until like third ed and early editions. It was literally just save versus spells, or you are disintegrated.
Range is kind of short, isn't it? I don't know if I want it to be any longer.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, you do want to avoid people just being sniped from across the dungeon and or someone just like an anime person just boring with a gigantic laser cutting through the dungeon. But I mean, it
I
does
guess
have
that's a good.
utility as well, because it does especially say you can destroy walls with it, including the Wall of Force, which we'll get to in a couple of
Yes.
years.
So it's a bit of a siege breaker as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Disintegrate and its interaction with Wall of Force is probably one of the reasons you'd keep it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
more interesting than Counterspell. It's kind of specific. This is the right tool for the right job. It has a nemesis on the spell list. They're at each other. So yeah, let's keep it. Let's keep it then. We'll dispel any sort of doubts about Disintegrate and move on to
Dispelling evil and good.
just keep getting this wrong. Just keep getting this wrong. It's the worst.
That's because the third ed, everyone cast Dispel Evil to dispel. Actually, no one cast Dispel Evil. They just went to other, bigger supplements and found the cleric spells that actually did damage and just used those.
Okay, dispelling. We're back to this. Right. It's a concentration 1 minute, it's 1 action. It's a 5th level spell, and shimmering energy surrounds and protects you from. Okay, we're back to we don't like foreigners. Protects you from fae, undead, and creatures originating from beyond the material plane. There's a real disconnect between what they call this and what it actually is.
Yeah, they didn't commit the bit. Presumably, in the new self-conscious edition coming up, this will be remain to dispel extraplanar creature or something like that. But we're dealing with what we have at the moment. So yes,
part of the border control playbook. So yeah, for the duration, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. Okay, and then there's a couple other things about it.
yeah,
Breaking challenge.
it's a weird thing where it's essentially you can either hold it in for up to a minute as a sort of defense spell where you're protected from these things, which go handy. But you can also reach out with your touch of border control, touch a charm, frightened, or possessed creature, and end that effect. So it's one of those effects where this is one of those things where the way the monster manual is written might actually be useful, because you'll see an awful lot of what we might call mind controlled effects in the monster manual, where it's this is rather than have it be a special effect, it will say that for the duration, the monster has charmed this creature, and while it's charmed, it has an additional effect, which is the actual thing, like you're dancing or you're running away from them or running towards something for the duration of the charm. But this would break the charm or the frighten or whatever. So useful.
Yeah, it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife of a spell. 5th level, so the fact is, it's expensive enough. Concentration. In this case, I kind of see why. Because it has some useful things in there. This is a real support class spell.
Yeah, it's
Because
a
tags are
cleric
yeah.
staple. You see, and the second thing is that you can, if you don't want to touch a person being harmed by one of these mysterious foreign types, you make a spell attack against one of these extraplanar interlopers, and they must make a charisma save or be banished back to where they came from.
You go kind of mega church evangelist on them. You slap your palm on their forehead and be gone. Just rocket them back to their home plane.
There is sort of a sense of everything must be in its right dimension, and skipping between dimensions is against the balance or something. There's
unnatural, I tell you, unnatural. Yeah. They're out of they're over here taking our mana. I don't know, soaking up our spell levels. Yeah, we could make fun of this all day, but this is I think this is a pretty good spell because it has lots of different uses, and in the course of that minute, which is what, like 10 rounds combat, you have options. As long as you don't lose concentration on this, that's another matter. But you can kind of look around and go, okay, first of all, much harder for them to hit me, which is great, helps you keep concentration. And now I can keep my fellow players in the fight by dispelling these charms or frightens or possession. Possession's a mad one. Like possession is, I'd be frightened of anything that can possess, because it's going to possess your barbarian or your paladin or your just goated fighter or rogue and wreck your plan. So getting rid of that for touching them. No rolls, no has to be willing, no nothing. You just, as your action, run up to them and slap hands, and you drive them out. That's great. And I mean, if you don't have a mega church evangelist bit ready for that, I don't know what to say to you. And then dismissal, which can really turn a fight, because it might not be that the big bad in the fight is one of these things, but they may have summoned in something to help them, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm going to slap you right back wherever you came from. I'm going to lay a hand on you like Will Smith at an awards ceremony, put you back in your place. So yeah, I like it. I think it's a good spell. Anyway, said enough. Anything against it apart from concentration?
Other than the undertones of exclusionary and not in my backyard.
Not from round here, are you?
Yeah. Other than that, I think it's a good flexible spell, and I like that kind of thing where you can use it in multiple different ways: defense, offense, recovery. Yeah, no, I like it. I would keep this.
I've said again and again that D&D should be way more racist and exclusionary, just as a logical kind of consequence of the world is. So this fits entirely with that. But yeah, look, all joking aside, I think it's utility-wise, mechanically, great spell. I think it's kind of funny that the spell and detects the evil and good, wrong way around, have this kind of undercurrent of, well, you're not really from here, are you? Which is just hilarious, given how WotC's tried to be inclusive. But there you go. Okay, now I mean I've seen this happen in a campaign where at least one player character was technically from another plane, despite the fact that they knew nothing about the place. They were one of those dream kids, and they got hit with this effect, and they ended up on their inverted commas home plane. Or like, what the hell is going on? Where am I? we had to do a certain amount of work to get them back into the game.
Mm.
So yeah, you could be real mean with this.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Okay,
one,
that
but
aside.
yeah.
So let's put this. I mean, we're done with the spells. What am I saying? Okay, it's an old bit. So we move straight on to
Dispel Magic.
uh,
You
this one. I
okay?
think we did an
So
episode about this, didn't we? Oh, no, it's
we did an
counterspell.
episode on counter spells, and
Counterspell. Okay, you know my thoughts on this. And this is third level. It is an abjuration. Great word. Instantaneous. A range 120 feet. So if you can see it going down, you can dispel it. Choose a creature, an object, or a magical effect within range. Any spell of third level or lower on the target ends. No arguments. After that, fourth level and higher, make an ability check using your spell casting ability. DC is 10 plus spell level. And you can upcast it. So you can guarantee that it dispels, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever, depending what you upcast it to. It's available to just about every class that can cast anything, and that's it really. It's Dispel Magic, which
yeah,
has its place, I suppose. In all
I
our
think as we
spells.
said in that previous episode, um, dispelling something that's already happened is less egregious than just countering everything as it
Very
comes.
true. Yeah.
But at the same time, I think Dispel Magic has really suffered from the separate inclusion of Counterspell at the same level as it. Um, Now again, they both
Hmm.
have their places. Counterspell can't do anything about a spell that's already been cast, and Dispel Magic can't do anything when you're casting something. So I understand the separation, but as we discussed, the mentality behind the sort of, stop the bad thing from having to be thought process, I think that has really turned people to using Counterspell rather than Dispel Magic. And it's sort of undercut the idea of like how does someone deal with magic? Because with all of the magic spells, you just sort of make saving throws at the end of your turn until they go away.
Yeah.
The amount
Balance
of
probability is going away anyways.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like
I can't think of a lot of low level spells, third or lower, that provide a permanent effect on a thing anyways. So the chance that
of
you're
the
going to rock up to
continuous
something a
flames,
week. What's that?
continuous flames. That's a lot.
Continuous flame. Okay.
That's one thing you
If
can really do if you're a real asshole GM is you can just uh, trick your players into spending all their ruby dust on continuous flames, and then have someone dispel magic their investment.
oh no. Well, we should have been out adventuring, not getting into small to medium enterprises. Um, this certainly feels like this should be the ritual cast version of Counterspell.
Mm,
Because why is this instantaneous? Like, why is it so important to get this off as quickly as possible? One action casting time. Like, just have this be, oh, if we need to dispel an effect on something that isn't just going to go away because eventually you're going to make a will save or whatever, then just have it be the ritual cast, the 10-minute cast of Counterspell that you unpick the weave to get rid of whatever this effect is.
so you'd say
Uh,
that you would essentially either you. This is one of the things we keep running into is that
it leaves a gap. Counterspell, if I see you trying to do it, I can counterspell you. As much as I don't like it, there you go, it's in the game. If I come across a spell in effect, I can take time to get rid of it. But it leaves this gap where there might be something that might be time sensitive, say within a minute or so, that isn't necessarily, I saw them, I didn't see it being cast, but it has been cast, I need a way around it. So is that gap good or bad? I'm not even sure. But
yeah.
I think like it's kind of interesting that there's certain things you just can't get around because magic isn't, well, magic is magic, but it's a systematized magic, so it doesn't have neat solutions for everything. You've just got
This
to
is one
work
of those.
through it.
This is one of those things where having some Magic the Gathering terminology come in, where like,
Right.
does this work on summoning spells? Does this work on curse spells? Does this work on being charmed? Um,
That's a good question, actually.
yeah,
So
like
summoning spells, can this be used to unsummon something?
Presumably, yeah, that's one of those questions. Is like, is it something that's been summoned by a third level spell? Is it being affected by that third level spell? Like, yeah, like they've tried to make what was once one of the most complicated, sort of meta magic spells, that were, of earlier editions. They've tried to. First off, they made it simpler by cutting off the whole stop the spell from happening and making it its own separate spell, which from a making things clearer aspect is probably somewhat beneficial to the game, but it also means that they've now really tightened up the text of the spell, where this is one of those ones where, can you, like, how do you dispel like something a monster does? Can you dispel like the stun from a mind flare? Does that count
It
as a spell?
it doesn't dispel. So curiously I clicked into the comments on the spell because that's what D&D Beyond has now, which is kind of useful. According to Wizards of the Coast, they say that Dispel Magic is only to break other spells. It has no effect on spell-like abilities, i.e. a vampire's charm. It also does nothing to the properties of a magical item.
Yeah,
But
which
it's other spells. So
yeah,
if something is locked,
I get that
arcane
because
lock.
one of the big problems it had was like you'd kind of try to zap other people's magic items and turn those off, but how many rounds does that turn it off for? And I
Yeah.
understand not wanting that kind of problems, but it having this sort of very tight and um underwritten version of the spell
I was just going to say, did you
invites
think it
more
was
questions.
underwritten? I
I
think you're
think,
right. It is a little bit, given how complicated the magic system is. Really,
yeah, like I
yeah, this
feel
might need a little more juice, a bit more meat.
like, I mean, there's a whole thing we could do about. We've already complained at length about different counter magics, and uh, that can affect whether we'd rather it be some kind of chaos magic battle of spells, or what have you, or as you say, this idea of we're going to spend 10 minutes and risk some random monster encounters so that the wizard can sort of like pick at the bad spell on top of this door, like some kind of scab. You know, there's elements to it, but I think this verse is underwritten, and if we're going to cull counterspell from this, I'm not sure that Dispel Magic's different playstyle is enough different to justify keeping it as while counterspell goes away.
Did we call Dispel Magic or
I'm pretty sure
Counterspell?
we did.
Wow. Okay, I win. Yeah, I'd say get rid of it and replace it with something better. I think again, I'd prefer to see this and the other thing, kind of mushed together a little bit. Yeah, this feels underwritten. Oh, I mean, it's at a grand old level, and
To
you
make
can
this,
upcast it.
yeah,
Go on.
to make this satisfying, you'd basically need to do a third edit where every almost all spell monster abilities had to have the equivalent. Oh, this is the same as using a fifth level spell, or this is the same as using a second level spell, and then use that to sort of gauge. You need to do something like that, or you need to start basically rewrite the entire rule system so that
I
like
think that's outside of purview.
yeah, this is outside of
We're
our.
not completely mad.
We don't think
Uh,
we can fix this just by. We're here to call spells, not to fix fifth ed. We've said this before.
we keep saying this. Okay, it's like an intrusive thought we have, or perhaps a.
Dissonant Whisper. This is a first level enchantment. Um, this is one of those odd ones where, because this is one of the few ones that isn't a callback to a spell that's been around for
Is this
50
just
years.
bards? I think bards are
Yeah,
the only ones with it, and something called the Great Old One, which I wasn't aware was a player class.
no, I think
Okay.
that's a subclass of Warlock.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Um,
So largely about sort of it's mean girls kind of behind your back stuff.
it's the upgraded. It's sort of the first level. Like if Vicious Mockery is your equivalent of Flame Bolt, then this is your bard equivalent to Magic Missile. This
Right.
the target must make a Wisdom save, and if it fails, they take 3d6 psychic damage and use their reaction to run away. Um,
This is great.
it's pretty neat, yeah.
It attacks a pretty lousy save. It's got good damage at first level, 3d6. It's psychic, which nothing is going to have defense against at first level. And they have to use a reaction, if they have one, to move away. So it's like getting a momentary frighten on them.
Yeah. They're just like,
So good.
the voices!
And
The
it's half damage on
voices!
save. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
half damage on save as well. On 3d6, that's, what is that? Street math. It's 12. It's like, that's 6 damage they save. It's pretty good. Damn. I mean, Bards, this is a really good early game damage option.
Yeah, with the option to upcast for a tiny bit of damage. Not efficient, really, because it's like 1d6 per level, but, the option is there.
Yeah, and with 60 feet, it means you can cast it from the back line and sort of be relatively safe from most things.
One of the big things is that if they fail their save, they use up their reaction. So it is good for if you want to be able to run away or run past someone without taking opportunity attacks. You can basically turn off their.
Yes, turns off the reaction. That's a really good point. Man, there's lot to like about Dissonant Whispers. It's a very good first level spell. It is, I'd say it's almost a benchmark for what a first level spell should be. It gives you a few different options. It's not terribly overpowered. It's not going to scale particularly well, but that's fine. You're going to get rid of it fairly quickly.
I think it's good. It does. You are going to probably get some purists to say that they don't like. Well, the people who don't like that bards are just spellcasters. They're just wizards with style or wizards with notions, perhaps.
well,
And they don't like.
wizards. Yeah, perhaps wizards should get one of those two things. Wizards
But
without
yeah,
notions. What are they?
it's just like
Poor
if there's certain people who do not like the paradigm that all classes need to be able to do damage in a fight. But like that, sorry OSR people, but that's been not been true for 40 years. We live in the world where people roll dice to make people's hit points go down.
What
It's
would you like to do during a fight? Knit?
yeah.
Okay. Leaving
Another
aside
episode, perhaps.
your legendary dislike of the OSR community. Yeah, I think this is really good. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and bards. This is if you don't have this on your level 1 bard sheet, then I suspect you haven't looked at an optimization thread.
Or you've found some low level charm spell that you like to
yeah, you're going the other. Yeah, you're going the Randy Bard route. This is that's pretty good. Dissonant Whispers. So I think we can fit in one more.
Okay.
I've consulted the higher powers, and it is through the use of this one that I know that we can get one more done, because it is, of course,
Divination. 4th level spell with the option to cast as ritual. So other than the 25 gold pieces of funny smelling candles that you need to use each time.
it's talking about incense and a sacrificial offering. So presumably a young bull or a firstborn or something like that.
I mean,
That's 25 gold is a big hit, but hey, who doesn't have a firstborn to offer up?
see what what's the price for a firstborns in the equipment section?
Yeah, it's like a bag of them. Oh my goodness. Okay,
yes,
so
again,
this is clerical, clearly.
Yeah. This is got a very clerical thing, despite being the name of a wizard school of magic. But anyway,
and druids get access to it through Circle of the Land. So there's that. Okay, so mostly clerics, mostly talking to a god or gods, and it's another one of these ask your GM what's going to happen kind of spells.
Yeah. So you ask a single question concerning a specific goal, event, or activity to occur within the 7 days. This has not changed if you're in the Forgotten Realms and no one knows what a week is. Instead, they have 10 days. So I guess it's just nerfed in Faerun where it should be. But anyway, the GM offers a truthful reply, but it might be a short phrase a cryptic rhyme or an omen.
So whatever, yeah, depending on the style of GMing, fine, okay, that's fine. I think it's but the next line kind of kills it.
Yeah, it can't take into account if anything you do to actually change what's about to happen. So it doesn't like update. You don't get an updated reading if you change reality so that thing that's God said was going to happen doesn't happen. And of course, if you just spam replies to God, you just have a more and more chance of just going wrong, as presumably
Which I
God is.
recall, it says a 25% cumulative chance each casting after the first that you get a random reading, which I recall from the first edition DMG being kind of a thing with a lot of these sorts of spells.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
Yeah.
clearly someone got hold of a glitch where they could cast it multiple times in one of Gygax's games, and he was just like, right, you know what? I'm gonna just statistically overpower your bull, so
Yeah.
that
Like,
you're just getting just wild, weird answers back from whatever gods you're appealing to, because you just keep pestering them.
yeah,
Right.
that's one of
What
those
do you
things.
do
Is
with
like, I
this?
feel like there's now let's do the routine. There's two kinds of GMs. Well, there's many kinds of GMs, but there's going to be GMs for whom the interaction between cleric and divine power is going to be really interested in them, and they're going to have fun coming up with what the omens are, and or just maybe they just like having the ability to say, "This is the voice of God. You're meant to go to the Tomb of Horrors and smack some orcs." Yeah, these are all. Some people are going to like that ability to interact that level, but again, there are going to be some more Gygaxian types who are going to, as soon as they cast the spell more than once, they're like, "Oh, just stop wasting all your spells on asking me questions constantly, and just do things. Spend your spells doing things." And honestly, I don't think that's a thing you're going to deal with by adding,
Oh,
these
where to go with this?
passive aggressive rules at the back of every divination test, because we've seen this before on other these
That's true.
similar spells like contact other plane or whatever. Like, do they all have this thing of just like, you know, use the information you got, don't just keep asking again and again. But if a person feels compelled to ask again and again, then that's not a problem with the spell. That's a problem between the GM and the player, where one side is not sending the information and vibes that the other wants to hear. Or
Yeah. I think other kinds of games have sort of figured out how to do this. What I'm going to say is that when you cast a spell like this, depending on its level and kind of the power, whatever the investment is, it should be an opportunity for the players to make a declaration about the truth of the world. And it can be more specific or less specific depending on the level, or the short version. The players cast one of these spells and they get to say something that will be true, and the GM might go, "Oh, yes, and," or "Yes, but," and then later down the line, when that thing occurs, that's the benefit of this spell. The players got to say, "This thing will happen."
I think
Might not
that's
be
an
very good.
interesting way to take it. It tends to end up in a lot of Power by Apocalypse games, but those tend to
Yeah,
be shorter campaigns, generally not more than 10 or 20 sessions, and also those tend to be ones where the players have already helped create the setting, whereas D&D unfortunately has the baggage of trying to run dozens of settings that's built over the years, and also be applicable to anyone's generic fantasy setting. So it's a more difficult to use that kind of paradigm, but it is a good paradigm, I think, to consider. Um,
it doesn't have to be earth shattering. It can be like a gate will be left open, or a rope will snap, or someone will forget to check this thing. And in the case of knowledge about something, which divination obviously kind of refers to, um, yeah, it's you can make a declaration. Say, I guess it depends. I think this is one that kind of like a lot of the similar spells you talked about feels like it's a opening of negotiation, and yeah, we should, I think, cut it because it's so wishy-washy. Should
I
probably
am.
be something
I
different.
yeah, as I said, I really like the idea of these types of spells, the sort of chance for the GM sort of embody the the spirits of nature or the great god of forgecraft or the great old ones that gave the warlock a power or whatever have you, wherever you're getting this divination from. I like that as an idea, but I don't think it's one that should be a spell. I think that should be like, again, an awful lot of these issues I'm going to have is just if you have a book of rituals, and if you do as a ritual as a downtime or as a 10-minute spell, risking some random encounter or running out of torches or something, and when you do this ritual, that doesn't eating up, it's not eating up your battle resources. It's just
Right.
letting you try these different things, like asking your god for hints
This one
or
is a ritual.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I think so. Okay, look, I think that's a pretty good place to leave it in the uncertainty of divine oratory.
yeah,
Right, Spell Cull episode. How do we end these usually? Sort of just
promise to keep going despite
yeah.
50, 60 spell. No, okay, not quite 60 pages of them left.
What could
Uh,
stop us at this point? We're on a roll. We're somewhere lost in the D's. No jokes, please. In fact, if you do want to make jokes, you can make a joke on our big D. That is our Discord server, where
best
you'll
be
find
around.
you'll find a link in the show notes, and you can weigh in on any of your favorite spells from the D section or any other section. In fact, anything you think we might have missed about this one. So yeah, we'll have to pass on our scribbled notes, furious citations, and torn up pages to our spell auditor, and we'll let him and his shiny pate do the
And
actual
his
hard work.
wonderful taste in jackets.
He's a sartorial dude. Uh, keep an eye out for the title cards for these ones, folks. He's we've toned him down a little bit, wouldn't you say?
A little bit, but there's all that smoldering underneath the surface that you
He could have
can't.
easily found a place amongst the ranks of the masters of the universe, I think, back in the day. Until the next
Auditor.
time. Yeah. But until next time, we're just going to leave it at that. We should really figure out a sign off for these.
Keep calling.
Keep calling. I think that's it. Keep calling. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to the Adventuring Party. Join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license. But you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye. So you're saying if you're not running anything at the moment, are you?
I am running World Start number.
You are. Oh, okay. Do you do that with Roll20?
No, that's just Discord.
You have a whole arsenal of tools. How well do you know this? How well do you know Roll20?
Barely like any exposure to it, really.
Yeah,
Like
it's finicky.
if I was in the right mindset, I could easily see myself using all the tools, but I just haven't found myself in the right headspace. I think for this kind of stuff, I really need the physicality of like being at a table with
Yeah,
a hex map and
it's a
a
pretty good
dream.
whiteboard. Yeah, there's lots of things you can do with it. Honestly, if I wanted to run D&D online at the moment, I'd be very tempted to use the above D&T virtual tabletop, which is a plugin. So a lot less weight than Roll20, no accounts or anything needed.
Mm.
It's got some fantastic stuff in it. Anyway, it's beside the point. But
Yeah.
right,
All right. You want to lead us in then?
let me think about this. Okay. 5, 4, 3.